For today's conversation, let's welcome Itzia Belostegui-Goitia. She is the CEO and founder at the sustainable luxury fashion e-commerce Troquer, where she leads the company's evolution. Itzia has more than 15 years of experience in strategy, planning, and finance for companies in the financial industry and startups. Thank you, Itzia, for being with us today. We also have Juan Miguel Guerra, head of Rappi Pay in Mexico at the on-demand delivery company Rappi. Prior to this, he was Chief Innovation Officer at Citibanamex. Thank you, Juan, for being with us today. And last but not least, let's welcome Diana Molina, Head of Partnerships in Latin America at the financial services and software as a service company Stripe. Before this role, Diana spent 5 years at Facebook, focusing on expanding sales and partnerships in retail, e-commerce, and financial services verticals. Moderating today's conversation, we have Aníbal Abarca, Chief Technology Officer at Wizeline, where he has expanded the team and built core fields of expertise in emerging technologies such as cloud, security, and data management. Thank you all for sharing your insights and expertise with us this morning. Let's get started.
Thank you, Brenda Lee, and thank you, Diana, Itzia, Juan. It's a pleasure to be in this panel with you and have what I believe is going to be a very interesting conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Let me start with a brief introduction on who we are. Wizeline is a product development and product design and development company. We are located in Mexico, in the US, Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, and Spain. And we partner with global companies and also with high potential and rapid growth startups to build and design end-to-end digital products and platforms. And this event in particular, and many more content that we are hosting and that we are promoting, is part of a series of panels and part of an overall initiative that we started in the past few months, that we're hosting also a podcast called On the Record. And you can find more about our events, you can find more about our content, where we are interviewing, talking with technology leaders, entrepreneurs, and key people in the market, in the industry, that are impacting our business, impacting and having a great impact in different markets. So this is part of a bigger strategy, which I believe and I hope you enjoy. And please look at our website, and thank you very much for joining. So it's a pleasure for me to host this panel, where we are going to talk about payment innovation and retail. And although it might look a bit too specific, I think you will find that the conversation is going to flow into different aspects, all the way from customer experience to the impact of fintech in the way people interact, the importance of people-driven and services-oriented transactions while supported with technology, and the different trends that we are seeing in Mexico and in the Latin American market, but not excluding other learnings and other experiences that we might find in different regions. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation with Juan, Diana, and Itzia. And starting on this topic, I remember when I was working in the media industry about 10 years ago, we were going through a similar phase, I will say, where e-commerce, in this case, back then it was online publishing, was becoming the norm and not the exception. And what I saw back then was the changing the brands and understanding that we were all doing the same. And one example was I was working for a newspaper where the brand was specifically X.com. And when we look at the New York Times and when we look at different websites in the US, they were already changing their brands, right? They were already changing the way they talk about themselves in their online platforms. And they were not longer, in some cases, calling them .com. They were just the New York Times, right? And I wonder, especially now, the moment that we're seeing and the tipping point, I will say that we are experiencing, do you think it's time for us to consider that we have to drop the E from e-commerce and we are going to talk about commerce as a single and as a single concept, mixing retail, brick and mortar, physical world and online? What do you think? This is an open question for everyone. Who wants to start?
I can jump in. I guess it's a pretty interesting proposal, Animal. There's no way to deny there has been an explosive growth of e-commerce in the last 2 decades, and the acceleration that we've seen in the last few months due to the pandemic as well. But we also have to remember that online sales still make up only 70% of retail sales. Even in the US, with some of the largest digital brands, Amazon, Facebook, Warby Parker, e-commerce still is less than 20% of sales. And in Latin American markets, if we think about Mexico and Brazil being the largest ones, that number is a lot more smaller. We haven't even broken the 5% market share. So I do hope, back to your proposal, I do hope like that we drop the E in e-commerce one day and it just becomes commerce. As in the same way that we've dropped micro from microloans and simply provide access to financial services to more people and businesses, we should be able to facilitate access to businesses to operate online and actually give access to shoppers to buy from these businesses in the channel that they prefer. But I do feel that this is going to be a lot more dynamic than blurring the lines between the online and the offline worlds. If we think about a teenager, think about any teenager that you know, they might watch an influencer video in YouTube, then head to a website at home, maybe visit the pop-up shop, and then actually complete the purchase on Instagram while they're waiting maybe for an Uber or actually ordering their lunch from Rappi. So it might be that this example is not just for a teenager, but it actually reflects a lot of us and our behavior in every day. And in all those moments, we're actually participating in commerce in one way or another. So I do hope that we get to understand these dynamics a lot better, whether we end up dropping the E or not. We definitely need to understand this journey and how all these dynamics interrelate.
Thank you, Diana. Itzia.
I would like to add to what Diana said. Actually, yes, the biggest proportion of the market is still offline, but not only is it in that proportion relevant, the commerce without the E, but whenever you introduce the e-commerce part of everything, you're not adding up that 20% or that 15%, you're adding up a much broader complexity. So we cannot say or confuse or try to say that we're at a status where commerce has both of those services homogeneous. So in order to serve the e-commerce, if you were born as a digitally native commerce or e-commerce company, you are not able to do and deliver the same service as traditional retailers. Whereas if you were born as a traditional retailer, it's not the same to integrate the e-commerce part without a major change. So we're actually in the phase of that transformation. We have not, even in the most successful and digitally permeated countries, still omni-channel commerce is a a challenge. So until we are at the stage where the customer is actually at the center of the commerce and not trying to put 1 + 1 together, until we have all made that change, I would really consider the commerce as an homogeneous service where you would understand that every service provider has all the digital channels integrated. So that would be my objective, or whoever is in all sides.
Thank you, and I think we'll come back to some of those points when we differentiate product versus technology, and how is that impacting the experience of the customers, for sure. Juan.
I don't want to repeat what's been said. I concur with both. What I have seen is also an explosion in the use of financial services through electronic channels, and I think we're a lot closer to dropping the digital banking, perhaps from the e-commerce. I think now half of financial services are being bought and consumed digitally. I don't have the facts right now, but I have a feeling based on the trends that I last saw that we're roughly about halfway there in banking in Mexico. So it's a really interesting space. Retail understood not just as commerce, but also financial services, and how it's becoming digitized at an alarming rate that no one expected because of COVID. There was a meme going around. What led to the transformation of your company? Your CEO, your CTO, or COVID-19? I think it's hands down COVID-19.
Yes, and that's a perfect way to go into the next question, where payment and especially when e-commerce technology and e-commerce tools started to be available, payments was only like one step in the process, right? When we talk about payment, usually we think, oh yeah, it's just the moment when I select the way I'm going to pay, and probably a very little piece of the technology where I can store the credit card information or select something very simple, right? But at the end, it's not that simple. And you mentioned the evolution and innovation in financial services. We are talking about different ways of payments and technology to provide a better customer experience. So what would you say is the importance and the impact of payments, technology, the evolution of financial services in the customer experience? And in particular, probably what's the space or what is the opportunity that you see in Mexico and Latin America when we refer to these concepts? Diana, you can start.
Sure. I guess when we talk about this experience, it's important to really acknowledge that it's now the consumer who has like this, there has been like this shift of power due to technology, because now the consumer can make more informed decisions, right? So now they can buy what they prefer, when they prefer, wherever they prefer, whenever they prefer. So this brings a lot of challenges as well to retailers and opportunities to actually meet these evolving needs as well. But talking specifically about payments at checkout, retailers have to create an experience that allows shoppers to pay in the way they prefer when they're ready to check out. To put it in a simpler way, and how I see it is, retailers need to create a checkout experience, a consumer experience for these unlimited audience, and remove barriers for local and international shoppers. To illustrate better, I have I read this fact where up to 16% of shoppers abandon their cart if their preferred payment method option isn't available. So actually getting to understand like what payment method options are important for your consumers, it's super important. Imagine you lose 16% of your sales just because you don't have their payment option. That's huge. And the same happens for international shoppers as well. Now that they're less afraid to buy online from different markets. International sales for businesses that are selling cross-border account for nearly a third of their revenue. So now imagine that actually businesses could increase their revenue by 30% just by opening up to international consumers. So it is really important to understand this consumer experience and this checkout experiences, talking about payments specifically, for this unlimited audience out there that could be interested in your products, whether that's local or international. So it's very important to understand this shift to provide this consumer experience to maximize revenue for businesses.
Thank you, Diana. And probably jumping to the other side before listening to Juan, Itzia, what is your perspective? You own the product. You are providing and designing this experience for your customers at Troquer. What have you seen, and what's been the impact on the payments process and the customer experience?
I don't want to jump into a subject that maybe will come afterwards. But for us, as you mentioned, we are a direct designer of the product and the service itself. So we have two services and two products to design. We have both sellers and buyers. So there's this specific service component to sellers and a specific product developed and designed towards sellers, and then another one towards buyers. And for us, the payments or the payment platforms have two basic opportunities. One as a payment itself on the checkout phase, and then on the second importance, it has to do with a wallet creation. So as a marketplace, you would see that being a provider for sellers and intersector for buyers and sellers, this wallet gained relevance, right? So for us, introducing this as a product device, part of our service, has become not a differentiator, because people do not decide whether one service or another due to that opportunity, but it's a retention product. So it has helped us retain more customers into our platform. So it has and will become even more relevant in the short term. Which platform we partner with, which types of payment services we offer, and as Diana mentioned, dedicated to which side of our marketplace and towards who, right? So it has and will become even more strategic in the future. That's an opportunity for both Diana and Juan Miguel. Yeah. With Troquer.
Noted.
Juan, would you like to add the perspective from again, kind of an in-between concept that you are leading at RappiPay?
Sure. So Rappi is a commerce platform in a sense, right? They've experienced what Itzia was just mentioning, and I think that has made Rappi acutely aware that there's a real need to innovate in financial services. And most banks are about 200 years old. The largest financial institution in the world is now or soon to be Ant Financial, which is I don't know if it's even 25 years old as a company. So clearly there's a need to do things differently, and Rappi has signed landmark partnerships in several local markets now, in La Vivienda in Colombia, with Interbank in Peru, which was just announced recently, and for what concerns me directly, Banorte in Mexico. And we're really going after this whole space of innovating on the consumer end of things, not just at the touch point with the platforms online, but just their experience of financial services much more broadly. We see a lot of opportunity there. And I guess not jumping ahead, but just to mention this briefly, as a player that interacts with the consumer, both as a commerce, with a commerce offering and a financial services offering, that creates a lot more relevance and a lot more recurrence that helps us serve customers better. So we're expecting to launch a consumer-facing product soon, this side of Christmas for sure, and we'll start testing and learning what customers want in Mexico. We're excited to be doing that.
Juan, you can't say soon and not give us like the whole news.
I know. It's like now you are starting to talk about product launches like in the movies, no? Like it's gonna be next summer.
Coming soon.
It's for that's great. And you started talking a little bit, but Diana and Juan, this is a question for you on the financial services innovation and the overlapping and the collaboration with technology. What are the challenges? What is also the opportunity with these new services and the technology that you are bringing to the market versus the current I would say the other offerings that we might find, the banking industry or more traditional services. And I understand also, Diana, from the Stripe perspective, yes, you're enabling e-commerce, or you're enabling startups and companies to provide better experience, but you are also providing a great experience for the developer, right? Like the software engineers that are making it happen, that are going through the integration. That's a huge customer for a Stripe. So is that also a very important component from your point of view, and what do you see in Latin America when you think about that customer as well?
Of course, and I saw Juan and Anita nodding, so I hope like our reputation talks for us when you were talking about our like pretty much like helping engineers as well, developers, to make it just like easy in the different markets. And actually, like when we first arrived in Mexico, before I talk about like what we do overall and how we're trying to improve every marketing we go into. I remember when we first came into Mexico, having our engineering team sitting with Homely's engineers. For those who don't know Homely, it's a marketplace for home cleaning. Pretty much like sitting with them to troubleshoot the integration and get feedback throughout this process. So for us, it's really important that even as big as Stripe is becoming, just to have like face-to-face conversations with businesses, entrepreneurs, larger companies, so we understand better the needs, so we can adapt our infrastructure to provide locally tailored tools that make sense for each one of the markets. And as you probably know, we support some of the largest digital-first companies around the world, like Booking.com, Shopify, and Uber. And that same platform that they use in San Francisco, Singapore, or London is the same one that we actually deliver to our local markets. And these large companies expect exceptional reliability and performance. And that's the same service that we provide to the many small businesses and startups in local markets. And I think that's one of the really impressive things about Stripe. If you think about it, and if I think about it, like one of my best friends actually sitting in her apartment a couple of blocks from here, she's having access to the same platform that these large companies has to run her startup of 2 people. But it's quite impressive that we can actually provide that scale. that scaled platform to this. So to Latin America specifically, when we were having these conversations with businesses and with business owners, either from large companies or from smaller startups, in most of Latin America, it seems that they have to become payment experts because payments in Latin America are very challenging. But at Stripe, we believe they don't have to be. Imagine you have the opportunity to grow your business, but you have to focus on payments instead. It doesn't really make that much sense. So what we're trying to do at Stripe is that with our platform, Latin American entrepreneurs and businesses can actually start accepting payments in just a matter of minutes. So what Stripe does is automatically maximizes revenue with our best-in-class tools that avoid friction at checkout that we already talked about, but we also protect businesses from fraud and improve authorizations. And we run, we pretty much like asked all of our users around the world, and on average, businesses using Stripe attribute 6.7% increase in revenue to the Stripe platform. So what we really want to do with Stripe is we want businesses to focus on what they do best, and that's their business, and offer their products and services and leave payments to us.
That's amazing. Thank you, Diana. Juan, what is your take on that intersection and the current and the challenges that we're facing with the financial services innovation driven by technology and also the current regulations, the current players like banks or other providers?
That's a loaded question. So first, I think technology is making everything cheaper, faster, better, safer. And that is really empowering to the little guy. And I think this is perhaps the moment where I come out and confess my secret love for Stripe. When I was building my own startup from my bedroom, it was a company of 2 dudes. We were one of the first beta testers of Stripe in London. And then Patrick sent me a cupcake, and I had a chance to go and meet him up in San Francisco. And I've been following them ever since, and they won me over straight from the beginning. So I think it's something we've seen, I mean, at a massive scale. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of love for Stripe. And then I had the good fortune of setting up the banking team that banked Stripe in Mexico, working at Citi, which was a whole lot of fun. So go Stripe, because they empower the little guy, and I'm all for that. I think it's now a time when companies can do well by doing good and can become hugely profitable by catering to small companies. And that's a very good place to be in. So operators that can operate at a fraction of the cost that traditional financial services companies operate can cater to a much wider audience. And that's the case for us as well. So at Rappi, we're very excited to be able to offer financial services to people who either lack the access or don't get a better deal just because of the cost structures of the traditional providers. So it's super exciting time for us, and it's an even more exciting time for consumers. It was never easier to offer financial services, which means there's going to be more competition, which means higher quality, lower cost, more access, and that benefits everybody.
Thank you, Juan. Yes, and it's going to be super exciting. And just taking a quick note, and I was chatting with Caroline about this, something that you mentioned, Diana. It's today we are below 5% when we talk about e-commerce in Mexico, below 20% in the commerce space in the US. But I was reading and watching a video from A16Z from Anderson Horowitz yesterday. It's called the beginning of the end, and it talks about the next wave of innovation that is going to be focused on adoption. On adoption and usage of these platforms. when we have the highway, where we have the infrastructure, where we have access, because many people is connected via smartphone, many people has access to internet. So the infrastructure is there. Now we have to enable the usage, and we have to build the user experience. So it's going to be super, super exciting, what's coming. Itzia, you mentioned something very interesting, and I'm going to try to make an opening to that. But you mentioned the difficulties and the challenges for digital-born companies creating the same experience for users, for customers. And I guess from a marketplace, that's even harder, because if you're a luxury brand, you can always open a pop-up store. You can open a flagship store where you are going to be able to show your products. But from a marketplace, how do you manage that? Building you're a technology company, but you have to be product centric, but at the same time you are creating a huge experience, or you have to focus on the user experience and the user centricity of your product. How do you manage that, and what have you learned while building Troquer?
Wow. Well, actually, it's quite broad. We have learned a lot, and I would destructure what you mentioned, right? In order to put some sense into it, in my perspective. So in one sense, we have to put the customer in the center. So while putting the customer in the center, we have to organize all contacting channels, no, the omni channels around it, and then to build the technology enabled to provide that service. And that service entails personal service, people, and technology. So we have actually felt that one type of seller, one type of client, the seller, needs much more a personal contact. So we have to build not only the digital and information technology to serve the digital platform, but also we have to build the touch points where there is physical touch point with a client. So that is difficult, I would say, because you lose touch whenever it becomes offline, right? So you have to be careful of that endpoint over there. And whereas the e-commerce side is the easiest because it has been the more developed in the payment processing and the side that requires the contact with the buyer is much more developed, and that's what Rappi has developed, and that's where other payment processors take action. And for us, it has been difficult to integrate all that without being such an economical cost or infrastructure cost, trying to be the best manager to deliver the minimum viable product in each touch point with clients. So it has been difficult, and we're still focusing in integrating that and being able to scale all of that. When you mentioned that what's the difference between marketplaces and retailers, is that retailers control their supply chain, whereas we do not control our supply chain. So we have all the complexity of selling the object, but also all the complexity of gathering the object. And that's where the difficulties come, but also where the multiplicity and the exponential aspect of everything becomes much more relevant in the future, and it detonates. So it's an effort that we have to do now for it to grow exponentially in the future. I see retailers to be one-sided, no? Whereas marketplaces are two-sided, but the advantage of it is that you multiply all of the connections and that becomes much broader. So that's where the difficulty in our model is, no? Taking aside the physical and the offline.
Yes, and in that process to build trust between both parties, and the seller and the buyer, and then
sorry, Anibal.
yes, of course. No, go ahead.
Real quick on what Itzia was saying, and like the difficulties of that part of not just like selling the product, but actually like bringing on board all these sellers. We do see that marketplaces are doing like an amazing job at like shifting this new economy on e-commerce, because they're actually bringing on board even like the most non-technical businesses on board, and
exactly.
it's really on them, and they're they're really doing the hard work, and we do like to collaborate a lot on how to like share best practices and like develop tools, because we do believe it is a two-way collaboration into like how we can drive business, how can we help marketplaces actually make this experience better, while they're bringing pretty much all these businesses online that they can and they push. So definitely marketplaces and platforms are a very important part of the ecosystem and how they're driving this ecosystem in Latin America and globally.
Exactly, and I love it that you mentioned it, Diana, because we are indeed trying to bring in people that are not typically digital into the digital sphere. And not only that, but we're also bankerizing or bancarizando these little sellers that do it not only because of their interest as a company or professionally wise, but also as a personal point of view. And the other aspect of it is that there are very many different types of marketplaces. But the particularity into our marketplace is that our buyer and our seller can be circular and can be, they can sell each other things. So, no, contrary to what Uber does, the driver does not buy from the user, no, como que there isn't that connectivity, and where marketplaces where one side and the other side can integrate, it becomes much more powerful as well. So there's the power of the service of the wallet and how relevant payments becomes.
Yes, that's super interesting, and that's a very, very particular point of view that and particular aspect that you are building at Troquer. This is I believe super related to this topic on the, and I'm going to bring the next topic was the state of the ecosystem in terms of payment, and we have a couple of questions from Alejandro in the chat that talks, he's asking about the challenges that the Latin American merchants and commerce are having around fraud, around people not having credit cards or not being in the banking system, and I relate this to building trust. I think this was just a few months ago still a big concern. Like will people trust in buying from us online, and the merchants on going and being afraid of have a lot of fraud detected in their payments process. I think this might be more a question for Diana and Juan, but you might have also an opinion, Itzia. So who would like to start? This one, or
I'll go then. Yeah, there is like with any new technology, there is a period of people being cautious, and then you have the early adopters and then the late majority and so on. But I think with e-commerce and e-banking, we have definitely crossed the chasm. I think adoption is really beginning to snowball. With the growth of e-commerce and e-banking, also grow the opportunities for fraudsters. So, and some of the vulnerabilities come from the fact that we're using, technology that was invented in the 50s to carry out payments, or 100 years ago in some cases. So the underlying payment technology needs to evolve. And we've seen this in places like China, where you pay with your face. You don't need a card, you don't need plastic. And the beauty of biometrics is that it offers more convenience and more security. Very often the problem has been that more security means more friction. It's less comfortable for users. But with biometrics, you can have the best of both worlds. It opens other considerations like privacy and the use of data. And it can lead to pretty dystopian versions of the future if we're not careful, and really deep philosophical questions. In fact, Silicon Valley went on a hiring spree to look for philosophers to code some of these principles and decisions into their way of doing things. Machine learning, biometrics, being informed by these guys. So it's a really interesting time for us. I think a lot of us using e-commerce will experience fraud, like a clone card or some other problem. Thankfully, there are some analog guardrails in place, like your bank will reimburse you if you've been taken advantage of, for example. But I think that technology is catching up with the times, and very soon we're going to have much better technology to be able to carry out payments in much more safely, and then we won't look back. We won't miss the plastic.
I don't want to be repetitive on things that Juan said, but one of the things that I think it's very important for us as well at Stripe, that we develop these type of tools to actually prevent fraud from happening. Although it's true, as Juan is saying, like in this huge acceleration into online in the last few months, the same has happened with fraudsters. But that's part of actually working with technology, machine learning, and how we evolve into this space as well. But as I said before, is like, how do we also collaborate with players in the different markets that have the experience, that are also working on new solutions to actually integrate all this, so we can provide better solutions to each specific market. And back to payment methods, as we were talking before, if you don't feel comfortable because you don't trust the card, you need to provide, as a business, you need to provide other options for your users. So I guess it's back to like playing different dynamics into this one solution, and we'll see how it will evolve. But it's definitely like, how do we bring all this together so we can provide better solutions?
Thank you very much. And I want to ask this and probably have the opportunity to answer some questions from the audience. But before getting to the end, because we're almost getting to the top of the hour, I would like to ask you probably to share your comments, any closing remarks, because I do believe that from different perspectives and very important positions, each of you in your industries and in your with the products and services that you are providing, your learnings, your experience is super important for entrepreneurs, for other companies that are looking into how to innovate, and especially now that probably you have seen also a huge change on the customer behavior, and especially during COVID. So what can you recommend? What can you share to the audience today in terms of from your experience, from your position? What have you learned during the past 6 to 8 months on this evolution and I will say digital transformation that has accelerated thanks to the changes that we're experiencing because of COVID.
If I could start, I would say that Troquer is actually touching clients in itself. I mean, the individual clients. It does not work for a company. No, it's not a B2B or a company to company. So we are really seeing a major change in technology adoption, in buyer and spending trends. And not only is it drastical, but it's very fast. Okay, so that change it also transformates in the early transformation that we were living already. It increases the importance of being much more customer oriented. So if I were to give any recommendation, and maybe a big learning, is to develop the muscle in your company, if you haven't, of a strong service design, UX, and onboarding, like a lab, an understanding and psychological area of your company to really get to understand your client, because your client doesn't even know of its needs, and you will introduce those needs to the customers. So you have to dig in quite deep in order to be the first one to provide that service, understand that there's a need, make the need existent, no, and then introduce the solution when even the client or the user hasn't even understood that that's the solution it needed. So every company from here into the future will have to have that lab, inside lab, where that muscle has to be reactive and very como agile, and build the complete organization around that, and not as it was before, that the complete organization was based on the operations. Now it's the shift of the total organization should be focused where the lab is, more exploratory, more experiential.
Yes, totally agree. Thanks, Itzia. I know Juan, Diana, who wants to go next?
I can go next. So I would say from what we've seen in these past months, I guess like it's really important for businesses to free up resources to do what they do best. And just as an example that I was thinking about this, that it was just like pretty obvious, I guess, for me. My sister-in-law lives in Spain, and she visited us last year pre-COVID and fell in love with these indigenous hand-waved dresses from Oaxaca. So she decided to import and sell these dresses back in Spain to family and friends. But due to COVID, she had to set her shop online and is now selling not only to Spain, but all over Europe. She has a full-time job managing her accounting firm and is mother of a 2- and 4-year-old beautiful girls. So she doesn't really have the time nor the resources to manage several providers or worry about different payment methods in a European country. So she relies on Stripe to do all this for her. So just as her, imagine that as a business, with a single onboarding experience, you could connect to a platform that allows you to accept cards, wallets, bank debits, local payment methods. And in addition to these payments, you could handle all your data and reporting in one place. And even better, you could later add your accounting, billing, and even be able to pay third parties. That would save a lot of work to your business to do what actually you're doing well. And what Itzia was saying before, actually, she was talking about being very strategic on the platforms that now businesses are working on. I think that's one of the things that businesses need to focus more on, and actually being very smart on the platforms that they're going to work with, so they can free up resources to do what they're really good at and leave pretty much like the rest of that just as payments to platforms that are really good at that.
Yes, that's a great advice. Thank you, Diana.
So not to repeat too much what's being said, but again, I think we're moving from an age where financial services providers forced us to take what they made, right, to being much more adaptive to the needs of clients. And there's just so much room. When I was at Citi, the CEO used to say, you know, the whole financial services industry in Singapore is larger than the market in Mexico. How can that be? That such a small island has a larger financial services market than Mexico? And the main reason, I think, is that the cost structure of traditional financial services is such that it makes it unviable to provide services to many more people. But with the advent of new technology, this will no longer be the case. So there's going to be a real surge. I'm super optimistic about the surge for inclusion and for financial services that are of top quality for providers, for the small guy. In our case, many of the we'll be looking to bring solutions to many of our partners, Rappi, and so I'm really looking forward to what's coming. I think there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, and there's never been a better time to be a consumer. So even though times are hard in many ways, they're also opening up tremendous opportunities.
Thank you very much, and I agree with that. And if may I add something there as what we're looking at Wizeline and the way we are supporting our customers in that manner is I believe that companies that are transforming into building these experiences and again looking into this wider adoption on digital services and digital experiences is I like what you said, Diana, is we can focus on what we are best at, but also don't forget that this next step in the digital experiences, and I think this is happening for Rappi and Troquer, is it's going to be a continuous evolution. It's never done. It's a product that is going to be alive, that you have to be close to your customers, you have to be learning, and technology is always evolving. So we're helping those, and we're having these conversations with our customers is we have to understand how technology evolves and we have to be able to develop that technology so we can tackle that opportunity in the market where, in the case of Stripe, you're supporting those engineers as well, those developers that are building the platforms on top of that. And I guess on the other side, you're experiencing that I will say pain, but it's actually that journey that is, you have to be always learning about the product and evolving the platform, right? Sorry about my kid. So this has been amazing. Thank you all very much for your time, for your advice and your comments today, and thank you everyone who joined this panel webinar. It was, I hope, very, very, very interesting for all of you.